This podcast is proudly sponsored by Joro Protein, a Rhode Island plant-based protein supplement company designed for athletes and adventurers. They deliver 25 grams of protein, 5 grams of BCAAs, and 18 essential vitamins and minerals. It's non-GMO, it's gluten-free, it's allergen-free, no artificial flavors, no added sugar or stevia, and it has no additional gums, thickeners, or fillers. Right now, you can get 30% off on this podcast with the code Joro Rhody Strength 2022, and you can find them at joroprotein.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Phase CBD. That's P-H-A-Z-E. They are a local Rhode Island company who makes and manufactures a wide-ranging variety of CBD products that are formulated specifically for athletes. It doesn't matter if you're a CrossFitter, a strongman, bodybuilder, or powerlifter. These products are for you. These products range from tinctures to seltzers to even roll-on applicants. By supporting this business, you're supporting a local Rhode Island business and you're supporting this podcast directly. Please check them out at phasesports.com.
All right, what's going on, guys? Dr. Matt here, host of the Rhody Strength podcast. We are back with Brett from Elevate.
What's going on?
What's going on? We enjoyed round one so much, we had to do round two.
Round one got a little wild, not gonna lie.
Round one was fun, though.
Okay.
That was good. I enjoyed it. I think we had the typical kind of like tangential, like one topic to another, which sometimes that's just where the great conversations are, so.
Well, I hope this time I can be more conversational. I felt like I was doing like monologues and similes and all these things and all the alliterations of language, so I was like,
It was story time.
I wonder if Matt wants to talk a little bit.
That's all right. Hey, that's why I have the guest on, though, because like it's all about you. I mean, I'm on every episode, and you're only on
That's
a couple, you know, so I want to
when
hear
you're right,
from you.
you're right, Matt.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, it's all about me again. This is good. This is great.
So I guess we'll do a quick recap just in case someone didn't hear your first one.
Okay, deal.
Sensei Brett, owner of Elevate Judo and Jiu-Jitsu locations in Middletown, Exeter, soon to be Providence.
Providence will be doing with my brother and father-in-law.
Cool.
And it's going to be in this building, in this small room.
At CFP.
Yes.
For the video listeners, we are back in the CFP studio.
Hello, everyone. This is the place to be if you want to pick things up, put things down, including weights and humans. So,
that's great.
there you go.
That's fantastic.
Well.
So quick summary on, I guess, kind of glimpse of what you're all about. So we have, you started martial arts at age 17, obtained black belts in judo, karate, brown belt in jiu-jitsu. Your knowledge of martial arts has provided you with many different learning aspects and techniques and teaching styles. You now focus on coaching both youth and adult students. You hold a national coach certification from USA Judo and have a master's degree in global management from Saybrook University.
Yeah.
Close enough?
We'll start with that.
Let's start with that. So some of the stuff we touched on last time, I mean, we hit the rapid fire questions. We talked about...
So the rapid fire questions, one of them really stuck to me, like the whole, it's been like 2 weeks since then.
Okay.
Remember you said, like, who's your celebrity crush? I was
Yes.
like, I don't think I have one. And I said, was it Camila Cabello? Is that her
Yeah,
name?
yeah, the singer.
Then I was like, I should probably look this person up. I looked it up and I was like, I don't think I have a crush on this person.
No,
I don't think that's
just
the
a great
case.
voice.
Just that one song from like 6 years ago.
What song
She's
is
fine.
it?
She's all. I never be the same. Is that what it is?
I'm
I
not
have no
sure.
idea. I thought of the most poppiest song I could think of that
Yeah.
I could potentially have like garner enough traction for the viewers.
Sure,
you know? I was
sure.
like, that guy's cool. He listens to that hip song the kids listen to.
You're always thinking about the viewers.
So, my celebrity crush. I don't even know the person's name.
Okay.
And it's probably an older show now. And I don't even know if the show is still in season.
Okay.
Was it Vikings?
Never saw it, but it looked really cool.
Oh, so this is gonna be helpful. Now you can't help me either. There's a character called Lagatha, and she
Okay.
was a
Viking.
shield maiden. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
I could have a crush
On a
on
shield maiden?
the shield maiden
In Vikings.
in Vikings.
So I had
There you
just
go.
finished Game of Thrones, and someone was like, "Oh, you have to check out this new show, Vikings." And I'm like, "Yeah," and then I just forgot about it. But I heard it was
It's
a great
okay.
show.
It's a great. I didn't get through all the seasons. Sorry, Vikings. I got pretty far.
Did you?
I got pretty far. There's a bunch of seasons. I really liked it.
Yeah, it's good.
It was good.
That's good.
So there you go.
Well, all right. So, and then we also talked about last time, traveling, podcasts, books you liked, Instagram accounts. I don't think I don't know if we either got an answer if I asked you your favorite submission.
Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
That
Did we get an answer to that?
Long track. I like Konsetsu Waza a lot. The breakies and the takeies, right?
Okay, that's right. Okay.
That's arm bars and other such things, folks.
Very
I like how I
nice.
keep looking at the camera as if this is helpful for anyone watching the viewership. I feel like Amber.
The viewers feel a connection right
Do they?
now. Yeah.
Because now I'm nervous because Amber Heard was doing that in the.
She was looking at the camera.
She was looking at the jury, and
Oh.
people said that was odd. So I hope this isn't odd. Every time I go to talk to Matt and I look at the camera, I hope people aren't freaking out. I'm just trying to be helpful.
Fair enough. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I saw something on it might have been a meme on Instagram recently. She's one of the most attractive faces or something like that.
Amber Heard?
Yeah.
Oh,
but then the
fascinating.
meme, the dialogue, but she shits the bed. So it's. So it always it draws back some points. It draws back some points.
I thought that was amazing. That was on. That was just like on all the time, right? It was on YouTube and other places, and I thought like, man, there's so many really important, really like kind of stressful truths happening in the world, and somehow everyone's like, you know what we're gonna do? Put that to the side and watch this court case.
Yeah.
It was gripping. It was a reality TV show that
was.
was like kind of not ending. You're like, it can't get weirder. And you're like, it got weird.
It keeps getting weirder.
Anyways,
maybe we needed that a little break from reality.
Needed Johnny Depp and Amber Heard to help
was
us out, get through it.
It did make me like Johnny Depp more. I mean, not only the fact that he was kind of dismissed from everything. Like, if he got convicted, it was like, oh, he's a dickhead. But, like, he was dismissed, like, oh, those weren't true. But his personality during it was great.
I think that the only thing, one of the things that was helpful is you see people, right, who are in movies on camera, making more than $50 a day, right, at least. More than
Could be
5 or 50. Could be 60. Who knows? They may or may not have several nice houses, and things seem to be going well, like career-wise, wealth-wise.
Sure. Relationship-wise?
But life can still be very sticky.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when you're building yourself to be successful in whatever realm that you're trying to be successful, it's really hard to judge yourself against people that you see.
Yeah.
Whether it be TV or the news or history books.
Sure.
Because we don't even know who those people are.
Yeah.
Never mind even just people that are nearby.
Yeah.
So the only person you can really compare yourself for success is who you were yesterday, and just keep shipping that away.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
Take that, everyone, for whatever I said. Brett's like, oh, thanks for that advice, Brett.
No, it's true.
But I do mean it. I think I was like, man, these people like kind of. If I looked on paper, they've got it all.
Right.
However, they have nothing.
True.
All at the same time.
Yeah.
It's chaos.
It is. Yeah, you look at someone like that, and you're like, oh, it must be so nice to be them.
Nice.
They have perfect life, everything.
Meanwhile, fingers getting chopped off. Things getting left in the bed that usually don't go in the bed. There's some yelling involved. Tough, yeah.
It is tough.
Or, yeah.
All right, so we'll change tracks. We'll try to get onto the jiu-jitsu path a little bit. Jiu-jitsu judo.
All right.
So
I listened to one of your podcasts.
Did you?
Yes, I was trying to listen to a few of them.
Oh, thank you.
I had a moment to listen to them. I was listening to one person. He was a strength coach of was it URI?
Yes.
For the was it for everyone or was it for
strength
a certain
conditioning?
team?
Yeah, Leach.
Okay.
Coach Leach, yep.
I was listening to that, and that was great. And then another one of the podcasts caught my eye. Unfortunately, my time is so splintered right now, so if I can listen to something in the car, like that's what I'm going to be able to do. But I listened to the, I believe she's the hockey strength and conditioning coach. Sydney.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So I was trying to listen to that.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I wanted to hear some perspectives about what it's like to be a coach athlete or a growing coach athlete and all those things. So.
Yeah, she had a cool perspective on how to balance everything.
Yeah. As
far as like athleticism and coaching. So, busy person.
You know, it was interesting because of that podcast. I downloaded this app called MyFitnessPal.
Oh.
Coming at you. I've lost 5 or 6 pounds in 7 days.
Incredible.
Okay?
Incredible.
That's for you all. And for MyFitnessPal, if you decide that this might be the place for you to help sponsor the podcast.
Well, I appreciate that, Brad. Yeah, I'll throw you some money if they reach out to us.
Thank you. Make some royalties on
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
All right.
So, first question that we had left off on.
All right. I'm going to try to rein it in.
Which I think, which is fine, yeah. Which I think we touched on slightly, but I just want to kind of dive into the details a little more. Was so we talked a lot about the origins of judo and jiu-jitsu. I think one piece we didn't hit that I'm kind of interested in is we talked a lot about the origins in Japan.
Yeah.
But I don't think we touched too much on how it got to Brazil and then to the U.S.
Well, sure. And in, sorry, it's very popular. People call me. So here's a part of history that I wish I was able to have more time to truly race down the true history of a lot of things.
Sure.
And I think this is where a lot of the information gets a little diluted. Okay. So I had mentioned there's Robert Drysdale just wrote a book, and he might be making a film out of it as well. He might have Jamie look that up or something.
Jamie, where you at?
And that's a Joe Rogan podcast shout out right there. Joe Rogan podcast, if you want to sponsor.
Podcast sponsoring podcasts. We're all in this together.
So this is where like some things get a bit skewed. Okay. So what we have going on when judo / jiujitsu gets transferred over into Brazil is you have to understand that there's, I don't know the correct term, I'm just going to say Japan has a lot of their citizens moving to Brazil.
Gotcha. Okay.
At the time. Okay. At the same time, the Kodokan is it's garnering more and more people within it. All right. And
brief reminder, the Kodokan?
Yes, it's the original dojo for what's considered judo now, as opposed to jiu-jitsu.
Gotcha.
So and so probably in the previous iterations before we created judo, and then I can go over. I didn't go that over already. I can explain what do is, but I think the way.
The way. That's right. I was kind of close.
Sorry, fair enough. To be, right?
To be.
Raison d'être. So the Kodokan is getting probably has always been slightly politicized at some level when it because Jigoro Kano used to be a full-time professor on top of teaching judo, and it was a kind of part of the curriculum back then. And so there's multiple gentlemen. That's the other part of this that I don't have all information on. But one of the primary people is a gentleman named Maeda. And Maeda is essentially having disagreements with some of the higher ups in the Kodokan.
Gotcha.
And Jigoro Kano says, "Hey, you should probably get out of here."
Nicely.
In the nicest way, because I think he liked Maeda. Maeda apparently was a very good practitioner and a very talented fighter, like in general.
Yeah.
And my guess is there was some disagreements. Oh man, put a feather in this, right? There were once upon a time 2 Kodokans.
Okay.
I know this doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now. Bear with me. Apparently, there was a Kodokan in Tokyo. That's the one we all know as the Kodokan.
Okay.
The epicenter of the judo. At some point, there was another Kodokan in Kyoto. The one in Tokyo typically focused a bit more on tachiwaza, nagiwaza techniques, standing, throwing. And the one in Kyoto focused more so on neiwaza, katamiwaza, shimiwaza, kensetsuwaza. Yeah, they worked on the ground. And so a lot of times they were competing against other jiu-jitsu schools, no doubt about it.
Sure.
But when the 2 Kodokans competed against each other, it was exciting. It was like, who's going to win? The thrower, the more throwing-oriented people, or the more mat work-oriented people?
Little mixed martial arts action?
Yeah, well, it was also kind of fun, right? Because like you had some severe like mat work specialists like Isagao, I believe is the gentleman's name. That was super important in the development of mat work for what's considered judo, and even today's idea of what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is.
Okay.
So I have to throw that out there. So the reason why I throw that out there is after World War II, Kyoto goes away. That dojo's gone.
Gotcha.
And now you're left with
Tokyo.
Okay? So who knows, in this grand scheme of things, who knows where Maeda had kind of stood? Maeda might have been like, yeah, I want to focus more on these things that I think are important for fighting. And potentially maybe the Kodokan wanted to build things more towards a sport-oriented or more self-defense oriented kind of aspects, right?
Sure.
If you're being on the ground fighting 3 or 4 people who are multiple opponents, gets to be a little tricky.
Yes.
Fair?
Okay.
But if you're competing one-on-one, the ground's pretty good. In fact, it's pretty great if you're the one on top or winning.
Yeah, definitely.
Fair enough, right? If no one knows how to fight on the ground, and you have the ability to take out explosive energy by putting them down to a knees or especially to a back, things are going pretty well. There's some friction, and so Jigoro Kano says, like, maybe you should go to the United States. Maybe you should introduce judo to the U.S. And so Maeda,
maybe you should get out of here.
Yeah, should probably get out. It's probably, we think of that now, and I think of like, okay, so he had to leave, but like to me that's like a 10-12 hour flight.
Yeah.
Right. For them, they're like, I gotta get on that boat, huh?
Ugh. We're gonna send you as far away as possible. We love you, but you gotta go.
So we think about that, right? So you had to take a boat, go across the Pacific Ocean, which apparently isn't small. Some would say the largest ocean, right? And then you got to get to this place called West Point, which I believe is not in California. And so now you got to take a train.
Yeah.
They don't have Uber. Right?
No Uber.
You got to get all the way.
No planes.
Yeah. So you got to get all the way to West Point. So they're doing a demonstration, him and an older gentleman. This will come all together in a moment.
Okay.
And they're demonstrating the effectiveness of judo to a lot of the cadets. Well, in the U.S., like, wrestling's pretty much where it's at the moment. Plus, catch wrestling's definitely where it's at. Almost like submission-like wrestling situations. Almost like no-gi jiu-jitsu, to be quite frank. Something happens where Maeda is taken down in some fashion. Yeah. Or maybe he attempted to throw and miss it. Who knows? But, like, all I know is there's confusion. The person that was on top thinks he's pinning Maeda. But Maeda's in guard. And then Maeda puts on an armbar.
Yeah.
Submits the guy. And there's a lot of disagreement.
Sure.
People are a little confused. He's like, well, this is how we do it. And this is like, well, that's not what we do. Like,
right.
So like, well, who won? It's like, well, we'll do it again.
Yeah.
I don't think they wanted to do it again.
Yeah.
Right? But Maeda was... I'm very sorry. I should have done a better job remembering everyone's names. But there's a gentleman that Maeda went with. He's an older gentleman. He has a higher rank in judo than Maeda does. But he's not great at fighting. But in the U.S., people think, like, well, if you're a higher number, that means you've got to be better.
Right.
So they challenge him over Maeda.
Yeah. And
Maeda's, like, trying to be polite, and there's a hierarchy of politeness, by the way, just in rank and in the culture of Japan.
Sure.
He's probably been like, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, yes, I can do this. The guy gets the crap kicked out of him. Maeda's not happy.
Who gets the crap kicked out of him? The judo guy?
Yeah, the judo guy just loses.
Yeah.
And Maeda's just not thrilled. He's like, I told you not to do that.
Yeah.
You're embarrassing me. You embarrassed judo. I'm out. So Maeda then goes off to Europe and other places, and then arrives in Brazil at some point in time. And all this time, he has decided to become a fighter. Yeah. He's essentially doing MMA. No rules fighter.
Yeah.
You have to look up his name. It could be Count Kunto. Could be his name. Maeda. He had a fighting name. If you have more questions about this, everyone can look this up. You can look up Maeda and the history of Maeda and the Gracies and all these things.
How would you spell Maeda?
M-A-E-D-A.
M-A-E-D-A. I had an I and a T in there.
All right, well.
Queek Keeley is his fighting name? This might be pronounced differently.
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, that's in the wrestling show. That's for pro wrestling.
Oh, okay.
Right? So mixed martial arts career, you can see this, right?
Gotcha.
Now, I also think we might be looking in the late 1980s. So we have to go into Mitsuo Maeda. Ooh, look at that. Look how... He's got a mustache. That means you're powerful, right?
It does. I enjoyed my mustache in November. I felt powerful.
All right, so you could see how... there it is. Count Koma. Excuse me.
Okay.
So, Count Koma. Oh, that's nice. They call him Grandmaster Mitsuo Maeda. So, yeah, it's right here. Learned Jiu-Jitsu in Japan. He was bestowed the nickname of Count Koma in Spain, won hundreds of fights in Cuba, and gave his knowledge to young students like, here it comes, Carlos Gracie in Brazil.
Wow.
So you can look all this stuff up, but there's probably more and more information about this than currently thought. This is just what's like kind of readily available. And I think Robert Drysdale tries to really try to figure out where all this comes from, right?
Sure.
So, anyways, Mitsuo Maeda. Very talented. Uses a lot of groundwork techniques to win these fights. Taking to the ground, well, you got to finish, right? He's teaching. There's other Japanese though, also teaching some version of Jiu-Jitsu in Brazil at the time.
Sure.
And the story goes that the Gracies, the father, is essentially helping out with immigration.
Okay.
And in order to return the favor, he asked if Maeda can teach his boys, Carlos. And, well, I believe he primarily taught Carlos for X amount of time. This is where things get confusing, right?
Sorry, I'm asking you like a history lesson off the top of your
Yeah.
head.
But that's okay. There's all these things. The issue is there's more information out there, so I don't want to like give out information that like I might not have all the way figured out. And lots of people have written about this. And you could look up some of these things, but it had such amazing impact on the growth of not just judo in Brazil, but also jiu-jitsu. Judo in Brazil is huge, and for a very long time it was still more popular than Brazilian jiu-jitsu. We could look up a stats moment and see if judo is still more popular in Brazil today, or if jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, has taken over in popularity of number of people in there. I just want to see exactly who they believed he had taught, because there's ideas that maybe he didn't teach as much as people had thought. Yeah.
It is interesting whenever you hear jiu-jitsu talks about, especially in the U.S., they call it Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yes. Now, and I'm overgeneralizing.
Oh, sure.
The idea is that the Gracies and other Brazilians, by the way, had thought that they took the techniques that was taught to them and they had adapted it and created almost their own subsystem of what jiu-jitsu is.
Gotcha.
They could be right in many aspects. They could also... A lot of the changes might have happened later than people might expect.
Gotcha.
Based on potentially the rule set of the competitions that they were holding. Okay?
So maybe an analogy to that would be like if Gordon Ryan, who has had, and John Danaher, who have had a lot of impact on the sport, they could consider themselves like the Danaher method of jiu-jitsu.
That's correct.
Or something like that.
Yeah. Well, so it's great that we're saying this, because that's what judo was called, Kano Jiu-Jitsu first. So it's not, it was pretty normal to have a family lineage of name plus jiu-jitsu. I think we touched upon that before.
Sure.
Okay. I believe it wasn't just Carlos that was taught, but I think
maybe some other members of the family.
There's ideas. People used to say that Maeda had taught Carlos and Elio Gracie.
Sure.
I'm not sure if that's what it is.
Sure.
It might be important to talk to another great person. Would probably be like Marcio Stambowski.
Okay.
He's down in Connecticut. He's a red and white belt, core belt, a high level degree in jiu-jitsu. And Marcio Stambowski is a brother-in-law with all the Gracies, like Henzo and Alf and all those folks. His son is Neiman Gracie. His daughter's Deborah Gracie. So he would have more ideas about certain stories in history that I could probably give you just because he was there.
Yeah, we'll have to reach out to him.
Yeah.
Get some more in-depth knowledge on it.
So I don't want to go too far in depth about the history.
Okay.
But essentially, Japan, Maeda's major factor.
Sure.
Leaves the Kodokan. U.S., Europe, and Spain gets the name Count Koma. Goes to Brazil. He's a prize fighter. He's winning all the time. At some point, at some time, maybe it's in real estate or whatever it is, he needs help from the Gracie family. And the father was a Scottish Brazilian family. Says, like, the idea and the story that goes, teach my boys.
Yeah, sure.
And then from there, they say that they took the judo techniques and they made it more into capability for more groundwork for the weaker player to beat the stronger players. Who knows?
Sure.
Like, how long did Maeda teach Carlos?
Right.
That's
who knows.
With the historical context, I actually don't know if it was more than a few years.
Sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
There's so many things. Like, if you think about it, Jigoro Kano, who develops judo as we know it, or the concept of randori and other things, was pretty genius. When you look at his training time under the tutelage of the great masters, it's only a few years. They kept dying.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So, you've been doing jiu-jitsu now for about a year, right?
Yeah.
Now, off and on.
Yeah.
So, if you did it for another 2 years, would you think you were capable to teach a whole style in a whole school?
No.
Okay, well, that's what a lot of these people were doing.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind-boggling, right?
Sure.
And it's not just in judo. It's in other martial arts, too.
Yeah.
I have a black belt in karate. It's in the karate style, it's called Uechiru. But that's someone's last name.
Ah, okay.
Because they're like, just call it, it's his style. He's got a weird style. I don't know, just call it Uechiru, right? And so what happens is this guy Uechi goes, he's Okinawan, right? 'Cause that's where karate comes from. It's called T or Te for the longest time. Hands, just called hands. People are fighting, that's the way it is. But it's coming from China, mostly.
Sure.
And it's coming from a very specific area of China called the Fujian province.
Okay.
And over there, they call it like Southern Shaolin, potentially, or it could be White Crane. And there's an amazing amount of lineage and similarities that comes from these styles in China.
Okay.
This is important for like later reasons about all these things, but what I'm trying to explain is it was told that he had trained for X amount of years underneath a master in China.
Huh.
Or at least the Fujian province, whatever people would like to call that at this time. And he opened his own school, and then he had to stop teaching because one of his students killed some other person in a farming dispute. He said, "You gotta get out of here."
In a farming dispute?
Yeah. Well,
that's my cow. That's my cow.
You have to think about it, right? Back 100+ years ago, right? If you're a farmer, and you're gonna learn kung fu of some sort, or what is called hands in Okinawa or whatever, you don't really need your hands to like type. No one had keyboards. You didn't really sign anything, so you could just make your hands really dangerous.
Sure.
You can kind of make your hands like not so great for use for other small things.
Sure.
Karate back then was mostly open hands. Kung fu is like mostly open hands. But it's a whole different realm of fighting that people don't get to talk about very much. But if I stab you in the neck with my fingers, it's not good.
Hurts.
It hurts. Probably kills you.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, that's how people die in farming disputes over kung fu. Fair enough.
Gotcha.
All right,
fair
great.
enough.
So, anyways, he moves back to Okinawa. He vows never to teach martial arts again, and then somehow people convince him to teach him some stuff, and then all of a sudden, what was once called Pangai Noon, half hard, half soft, becomes Uechiru. And then you start thinking, how long did he actually train for? Let's pretend it's 10 years.
Yeah.
It's probably less than that.
Sure. Okay.
Right? But let's pretend it's 10. How much do you know?
I mean, for that long, a lot, I would say.
Yeah. What if it's only 5?
Less.
Okay. How long do you think it'll take you to get to a purple belt in jiu-jitsu?
What's
based on how often you train right now?
Me personally?
Yeah.
Probably like well, I have to hit blue first.
There we go. That's good. Nice.
I don't know, maybe 5 years? Is that what you say is a good estimate?
Fair enough.
Yeah, okay.
Well, with the amount of time that you're putting in right now,
Yeah.
you got to get to blue first. The ranking for everyone listening is white, blue, purple, brown, black.
Yeah.
And we talked about where those colors came from. Came from over in France.
Yep.
And then from judo is the belt system, all these things. But it has some weight and importance in it to
Sure.
Today's world. So in 5 years, you think you might get a purple belt.
Sure.
Well, that's 2 ranks below black.
Sure.
And black belt is supposed to represent the beginning of true learning.
Yeah.
So now we're realizing, wow,
It's a lot of time.
it's a lot of time to not know a lot.
Yes, definitely.
Isn't that amazing? So
Yes.
that's why, like, when you say the origins of jiu-jitsu, I think it's so interesting because, like, if you're only learning for X amount of time, like, I don't know how long Carlos and Elio learned underneath Maeda, or if they learned under
Sure.
him or other people.
Sure.
And so,
Sure.
did they adapt many techniques from the Japanese, and it really did develop their own style of jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
Well,
Hard to say.
Hard to say. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe they did. If you look at some of the videos from the early 1900s, you're seeing De La Riva hooks, though.
Mm.
You're seeing some very interesting ashikaramis and other situations. So I think it's a puzzling thing that I don't have enough information for. But that's kind of the origins of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's coming from Japan.
Yeah.
The guy visits. The story is that he visits all these other places, countries, as a pro fighter.
Sure.
And then he teaches the Gracie family, and the Gracie family improves upon what Maeda showed him
Sure.
for however long Maeda actually might have showed them.
Sure. Interesting.
Bizarro land. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of other information, and there's a lot of other people that probably taught jiu-jitsu to other people other than the Gracie family. It makes its way to the U.S. Primarily through the Gracie family, though,
Yeah.
because they created the UFC to market Gracie jiu-jitsu.
Really?
100%.
Yeah, because that was original days of UFC was like, okay, or at least my take on it was like, okay, let's have all these different fighters from all these different styles
Yeah.
and see which one's the best.
Yep.
And so I know like Jiu-Jitsu and the Gracies were a big part of that in the beginning.
Yeah. They were the part of it.
Yeah.
Right? That was like the name.
Yeah.
If you think about it, now some folks in the Gracie family were experts at marketing.
Sure. Okay.
Oh, well, this is one of the best marketing things you could ever do, right?
Yeah.
Because you create the UFC, which was so interesting. Is the UFC was very popular here in the U.S., right? And they sent in Hoist Gracie, who was probably the least physically intimidating of the Gracies.
Okay.
They're like, hey, if he can get everyone, then everyone knows that our stuff works.
Yeah.
It's not just our other guys that are like super good at fighting. Like some people are really good at fighting, like Half, Henzo, and other people, right?
Sure.
I mean, what I think is so interesting is like Hickson, of course. Jeez,
Yeah,
Louise,
yeah.
Hickson was the guy. What a lot of people don't know is like the really exciting fights were in Japan.
Okay. Yeah.
When Pride, way back, you had Pride was out there. They had some other organizations as well, but Hickson was out there fighting.
Huh.
Henzo, like some of the greatest matches of all time. Because back then it was like there was so much like unknown still about these ideas of fighting, and so much unknown of like who's gonna win and what's going on.
Yeah.
But like the Gracies were over in Brazil winning.
Yeah.
Sorry. The Gracies were over in Japan winning, and
Yeah.
they had this guy Sakuraba, and like there's great videos online and YouTube, and it can really build up the whole like what it actually was and what it felt like. But like Sakuraba was literally defeating the Gracies one by one.
Wow.
That was pretty crazy. It was pretty cool, just because like it had. When I look at all those fights, I think so much nostalgia. I think it was so cool.
Yeah.
It was so cool to put your family's name on the line like that.
Sure.
And get out there and compete in front of like all these people. I mean, those stadiums were packed in Japan. Very
bet.
interesting ways of fighting. Not just ways of fighting, but watching fighting. Like it's quiet, and there's like cheering when something good happens, and it's quiet again.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a lot like golf or like even like Olympic style
Yeah,
weightlifting.
that's
The
right.
audience is silence, and then something good happens, and then cheer.
Yeah.
And then silence.
Yeah.
Very like a respectful like way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, you go to a UFC match or a Bellator match here in the U.S., like it's kind of loud all the time. People are talking to each other,
Yeah.
drinking beers, and hanging out.
Yeah.
Now, the crowds have been way more educated
Okay.
over time in the U.S. So like
Yeah.
when they see like a trial choke, they're like, "This is awesome."
Yeah.
But you're still not dealing with the same culture in Japan, where it's like What?
Sure.
I always wanted to fight in Japan. I thought that would be the coolest place. I almost never wanted to fight in the U.S.
Yeah.
For a little while, I was really excited to become like an MMA fighter.
Sure.
But I had injuries that just did not let that happen.
Yeah.
Plus, like, income and health insurance were problematic, okay? Some would say non-existent.
Sure.
But yes, so that's kind of the history of how a lot of this exploded.
Yeah.
But
cool.
like, there's always been a massive connection between Japan and Brazil.
Yeah.
In and out of time.
And I think a lot of people have no idea about that.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting to know the history, because then you kind of can get excited to like understand what you have right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's actually a great segue to another conversation. Right now could very well be the best time ever to get into Jiu-Jitsu.
Sure.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It could be the best time ever to learn. And on top of that, it could be the most difficult time to understand certain things like culture and values that could be espoused in training Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
So, I'm giving such a long, drawn-out idea of history because it's so important, and I'm missing tons of names.
Sure.
And I'm not being crazy accurate on the history because there's just so much information we could fill up all the time, and we have other topics to go through. And like, I can come more prepared, and we can like jump down the history and like read all these books if that's people want to hear it. It's a strength podcast. It's your podcast plus martial arts, so I'm probably boring people to tears right now.
That's all right. I'm interested.
Okay. What I'm trying to explain is a phenomenon has happened where UFC has become very popular. People are watching fighting. People are becoming educated about this. And Jiu-Jitsu has always been just drastically entwined with mixed martial arts.
Oh, 100%.
100%. Yeah. Right? You must know some semblance of Jiu-Jitsu in order to be a mixed martial arts fighter. You have to do it.
They say in your stats, they're like, all right, what belt are you in Jiu-Jitsu? What is your style of fighting?
Big deal.
You know, if someone's coming in as a blue belt, they're like, oh God, he's only a blue belt in Jiu-Jitsu. Like, oh no.
D1 wrestler, but you know, it's fine. Black belt judo, it's fine. So, but you know, these things do matter.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to explain is like the UFC is televised, and that's a big thing for the coming waves of all the sports. All the ball sports had TV time. They got very popular. They figured out how to put commercials in there, et cetera, making money, and that's how more people are intertwined into the sport culture within the U.S. that we have right now. Like people play t-ball when they're a kid instead of doing jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
Why?
Yeah.
Well, that's what people have grown to become fans of.
America's pastime.
Yeah. Even though it probably was catch wrestling, but it's fine. So no big deal. So I'm talking about TV and video because back in the day, I used to scrounge for any information on karate and kung fu and jiu-jitsu and all these things. And so I would go to like Borders bookstores and sit on the floor, and I would rip these books out, and I would just read.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I don't have any money to buy this book. Got to put this book away, and hopefully I remember it as I run away. Right? In today's world, you can go on YouTube, and you get a wealth of information for free on YouTube. It's actually crazy how much information.
If you want to pay a little bit, you can buy some instructionals.
There you go. If you want to pay, like, people are like, oh, the instructional is expensive. Like, compared to what? Right? So let's say someone's instructionals, like maybe it's John Donner's instructionals. Maybe you're going to pay $100, $150 for it, $180, whatever.
For hours of video.
Okay, but it's hours of video. You can rewind it. You can watch it all the time.
Yeah.
And if you go to Jiu-Jitsu, you might have to pay that much for a month.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So now you have all these people coming in, excited. You have gyms that are a bit more cordial.
I'm going to give you a plug, or you can go on the Elevate website, and you have instructional videos on there.
Oh my gosh. It's a growing library. It's a small library, but it's got to grow because I got to make great students. This is a segue into exactly what I'm talking about.
Hey, that's how I earn my stripes on those videos.
There we go. We're going to do a soft class and we'll ruin the mics right there. Okay. So I have traveled around the United States to get tons of information from all these people the best I could. Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, karate, all striking, all that wild stuff. I've watched countless videos. I've probably almost failed out of college watching all these videos, reading all these books. And so
Brett, your paper's due.
Yeah, but
I learned all these new techniques.
I got this new technique, and kind of need to figure this out. And you're wasting your time. I'm never going to do anything with that stuff. I'm like, but I think I could if you just let me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Shout out White Electric Coffee, by the way, / New
Thanks.
Harvest.
Getting the shakes on right now. All right, so now, the issue with rampant available information, even information that are like amazing, like John
Yes.
Donner stuff, Gordon Ryan's, or JT Torres, I'm sure he's great stuff. Keenan Cornelius, as a like, look, you can keep going on and on and on. There's tons of people out there.
Sure.
What can accidentally happen is something that happened this past weekend. If you were so used to information just right in front of you, readily available, and you're watching the tape, and you're like, this guy does it like this, and this guy just won this tournament, and now I know how to do it, and I might know how to do this one part better than this person. I think he's even teaching this. I don't even know why he's teaching it this way. You can start all of a sudden not understanding the blood, sweat, tears, time, history that your potential coach, sensei, has. Time on the mat is time on the mat, and time coaching on the mat is time coaching on the mat.
Right.
And so...
Just because you theoretically understand how a move is done, and even if you really watched it 100 times, you remember it perfectly, you're not actually... You don't have the muscle memory, you don't have the practice.
It's that, and it's understanding hierarchies of organization and structure within the gyms or within your dojos that you're at that may be a more important construct than you learning how to take a wrist a certain way and turn it to get a harder crank on an arm.
Sure.
So these are the things that are happening right now. So it's never been a better time to start jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I would also just say it's also a time to be aware that with the massive amount of information available online and available to you to become way better, way faster, it can be a little unusual about the major lessons that Jiro Kano was trying to push onto everyone, saying that this is to make better people in the community.
Right. Not
just winning medals.
Right.
In the U.S., we're very, very much focused on winning.
Yes.
As a culture. I don't know if you've noticed this.
Yes.
My slight fear is when life is all about competing and winning, you can lose like the giant amount of respect and knowledge that somebody could give you if you were available to be receptive and listen to it. Because maybe it's not a technique that's your issue. Maybe you're so good at techniques, but you have a mental block.
Sure.
That those videos are not going to help you get through. Maybe it's the coach and having the values and relationships that you need to get to your next stage of life. I know this is strange and talking, but...
No, I can relate that back to actually CrossFit.
Okay, great.
There's two types of gyms, typically.
Yeah.
You have the community gym, which everybody's just in here having fun, getting fit, enjoying themselves, and you have the hyper-competitive gyms.
Sure.
But a lot of times it can be tough to draw a balance of both of those.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, your training programs are different. Your culture has to be different.
Yeah.
Your coaching mannerisms have to be different.
Yeah.
You can try to have both, but it's a little difficult.
Yeah, right? It's a tough balance to play.
And then if you're running a business, then you start thinking, like, how many competitors are paying me money? And you're like, guys, I got to pay rent. And everyone's like, yo, bro, I'm just competing. You're not even really coaching me. I'm just doing my own thing. And you're like, but I did all this for you. And you get this. And it happens across the board. It's not just martial arts, like in CrossFit. Those are examples. Okay. Yeah. Great story. I was down in Norwalk.
Okay. Connecticut?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mentioned him just recently in the podcast, but Marcio Stambowski is down there. He's got a great school, Gracie Sports down there. Very nice person. He has more years on the mat that I could catch up with. That's the way it is. Yeah. In jiu-jitsu. In Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Started when he was like, what, 5 years old or something
the original
like that?
black belts from down in that area, down the heyday, right? There's a new white belt student. He's very excited. A young athletic kid. And I walk over, my friend Pedro got ranked to black belt this past weekend from Marcio Stambowski.
Awesome.
It's very cool. Very nice for all that to happen. And I'm just blessed that I'm asked to come along and like, I want to be there and support Pedro.
Absolutely.
Marcio remembers my name. I think that's the kindest thing in the world that Professor Marcio is doing that.
Yeah.
I'm sitting on the mat. Marcio is off to the left, and this white belt athletic kid And I walk over. I'm like, hey, would you like to do anything? Or would you like to roll?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, no, I'm tired. I was like, okay. And he was like, oh, but I have a question for you. I was like, okay. And he's like, can you teach me how to get out of, like, the closed guard thing? I'm wearing a brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah.
I understand I black belt judo and I own a school and you know, belts are belts, you know, whatever. But at some points, belts are not just belts.
Sure.
There is someone with the red and white belt who's chatting with you,
Yeah.
giving you time of day, and you turn to a brown belt
Yeah.
and you ask for help. And I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. Like, I'm not used to this
Sure.
new culture. Even though I have my own gym, I see it all the time.
Yeah.
It was actually kind of like amazing as a guest to come in and be like, wow, like, and so I had to be pretty gentle in my response.
Yeah.
Well, at least I think I need to be gentle in my response. I said, well, okay, maybe describe to me exactly what you're having an issue with.
Yeah.
And he says, like, oh, I can't get out of the closed guard. Like, what should I do? I'm like, well, that's a great question. And I wait. I'm not going to tell this kid how to get out of closed guard in front of Professor Marcio Stambowski with red and white belt.
Sure.
No way, no how.
Yeah.
Am I ever going to have the thought process that I'm going to give his student a better look
Yeah. It's a hierarchy.
than him?
Yeah.
That is so, like, arrogant.
Sure.
I would never do it. I would
Sure.
never, and it's not my gym. It's like,
Yeah.
if someone asks a different question at a different time, and if someone's not sitting there and helping out, and I'm sitting there patiently,
Yeah.
and Professor Marcio then steps in,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, Brett, is it okay if I use you as an uke?
Yeah.
He didn't even have to ask,
Yeah.
but he did,
You sure?
right?
Sure.
And he nicely starts showing a guard break I've never even used. So I'm like, this is great. It's something I would never even show anything close to that.
Yeah.
It was so basic, so simple. And the young man is like, oh, I don't know if I can do that because my knee's kind of sore. And I'm like, I would never ever, like, when I traveled all around the U.S. asking for any sort of help, I would never complain about anything.
Yeah. Just take it. Yeah.
Like if you taught me a technique that you didn't have to, because I was a poor kid and I had no money, and I was probably terrible at the time,
Yeah.
I'd do anything you asked at that time to get that time and energy from you.
Sure.
I would be as coachable as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And now this guy showed him this unbelievable technique, one-on-one,
Yeah.
that he doesn't have to do it to a brand new white belt.
Sure.
A guy that just looked at me and asked for help instead of him. And I'm
Right.
like, it's a lot of patience. It's
Yeah.
amazing he did that.
Yeah.
And he takes away. The kid's excited. He's all excited. And Professor Marcio, he steps out. He goes, all right, we'll see you. And as they're walking away, I grabbed that young man. I said, hi, I want to give you some advice.
Yeah.
You should practice that all the time.
Yeah.
Even if someone shows you something different.
Yeah.
Even if someone shows you what you think is easier for you to do. Even if you think it's not the most effective way. You should practice that like minimum 100 times a day.
Yeah.
And if Marcio is watching, you should keep practicing it until like you hate it.
Yeah.
If he's in the room and he can see you and you have time to spare, you should drill that until you literally hate doing it.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, okay. He's confused. And I was like, because if you do not, he might not show you something again.
Right. Right. He's like, oh, he doesn't listen to my advice. He's like,
I gave him my
doesn't
advice.
care,
Doesn't listen. Doesn't
respect
value
it.
my time.
Yeah.
Kids these days.
Yeah.
People these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
That, I believe, is a canary in the coal mine.
Mm.
Not just of youth and understanding of hierarchies of respect and how
Mm.
things might work, but also the ideas like you might know something more because you watched some tape over someone that's been coaching for like 7, 8, 9, 10
Yeah.
something years, doing martial arts for 20.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you have to be really careful how you come across because as a coach matures, I was a young coach, I'm still a young coach,
Yeah.
but as a coach, never mind a sensei, that's a whole other ballgame of ideas of what I have about differences between coach, sensei, professor, et cetera, about the verbiage and what that might mean when you're
Sure.
the leader of something as strange as a martial arts gym. Go over that maybe if there's time. I don't know. But you have to be careful how you come across.
Yeah.
You don't have all the information. So you want people to talk to you. You want people to pay attention to you. You want to be coachable. You want to garner advice and knowledge the best you can. You can't do that if you're always talking, and you certainly cannot do that if you think you already have a better answer.
Yeah.
It's so dangerous for the growth of your mental and physical skill sets, and it's so dangerous. So
That's
I
where
believe
that
I
quote
believe
unquote
that's
white
happening.
belt mentality comes in, right? Well,
Yes.
a true white belt, like being
A
open.
true white belt, yeah, not the
Being
beginner white belts. I think you already know what's going on in general,
Right.
which is very common, right? So one of my biggest things for my students, sorry, I hit the thing. One of my biggest things for my students is like I try to make you into someone I like, because I know if you're irritating me, I'm probably not going to help you very much.
Sure.
That's the way it is. But as a maturing coach, I am beginning to divide up my time with those that I see have the personality and the ability to take my information
And use it. Which
can be very difficult, because at some point you're going to look at athletic people that have a lot of promise. They're studying all the time. They're working really hard. They're working. It can be almost, you might also think like, well, they're my students. They're doing great. But at some point you have to go, are they listening to me?
Fair. Yeah.
And then you have to go, do you want to be coached by me?
Right.
Or by anyone, really?
Sure.
Because if it's not me, you should go someplace else.
Right.
But a lot of people, they're like, I learn better when I'm learning my own with a group. And I'm like, okay. I have students like this.
Yeah.
But these people are everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not just this. This is not an uncommon thing, but it's becoming more common.
Right.
And I think to myself, never has it been easier to learn in Jiu-Jitsu, and never has it become so dangerous to not learn the right things. Not technical-wise, but like coaching-wise.
Yeah.
About life skills, about communication, about being receptive to others, about taking in information.
Sure.
The dojo is so much more than a place of fighting.
Sure.
Gyms are much nicer than they ever were. You can go in and expect not to get hurt. You can go in right now and you can expect to have sometimes a fundamental class just to get people in and be safe and learn how to do the major movements in a correct fashion.
Yeah.
You could have a great time. It's actually a blast. My only concern is understand that the people that have created the space for you to be there, a space to have a collective group of people that are all trying to become better each day, step by step, they might have put in so much more work and sacrifice that can be kind of understood. And so it's a warning to students, I guess, and it's also a warning to coaches right now, or professors, senseis, is like, you might need even more patience for the new crowds coming in. And you also I would suggest be careful with the time that you put into people that you think have potential.
Right.
The ones with potential perhaps may not be the ones that show up originally and seem to be very athletic.
Right.
They seem to have a lot of potential for skill. Because you can find people that are almost as athletic, whatever that even means anymore.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Who are just happy to receive information whenever they can. If you could shift your focus on the ones that are giving you appreciation and energy, you might be able to make them into unbelievable students.
I guess one example could be like, if you have, you're running a gym, you have 10 people sign up one day, and you see 3 of them that are like, oh, these are stud athletes.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say like, okay, who's going to be the best jiu-jitsu player here? It might be the person you have no idea.
Yeah. It happens.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. In the end, it's all time under tension, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Tut.
if the athletic kids get annoyed and they leave because they don't think they're getting enough time or attention or whatever it is, well, they left.
Right.
Maybe they went to another gym. They're going to do it again, though.
Yeah.
Right?
They
It's not
have
their
that-
problem. It's everyone else's problem.
They have that NFL wide receiver mentality.
Yeah.
Everything's about me. I'm the star of the show.
100%.
And you almost have to have that humility, in a way, to get better.
It's really hard as someone that you're trying to develop a school of people, and you need to develop really sound black belts, especially if you have pride as a coach. Like, I mean, I do. I have ego as a coach and pride. Like, I want to make some really unbelievable players. I really do. I want to make competitors.
Mm-hmm.
But like that can be pretty. That can get a little daunting really fast. I had an unbelievable student. I think the other thing is when you do this for X amount of years, you have way more past students than you do current students.
Sure.
And the people that show up and look at your gym, and they go like, "Where's all the serious people?" And I was like, "You missed them."
Yeah.
They've come and gone.
Yeah.
A gym of any sort, or a place of any sort, does this.
Yep. Up and down.
Up and down. Just like this. And so
Waves.
you're always in a process of developing your own partners.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a way out of this yet.
Yeah.
Now, people will say, yeah, but these other gyms are always competitive. They're always going hard. I'm like, that's because you know them right now. What about the ones that used to be the best?
Yeah.
What about those?
Yeah.
Like, you don't know the names of them because they're not on flow grappling right now. You just don't know.
Sure.
And everything goes up and down. My father-in-law, Serge Boissou, which also is another thing that we can tag along in this is a lot of people in jiu-jitsu get kind of lost in just jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
They think like this is the only sport that matters.
This is the end all be all.
This is the end all be all. Like this Brett's not like the best jiu-jitsu guy. Like, who knows? And I'm like, well, what about all the other knowledge that I have that you have zero concept of?
Sure.
Now, you could be wrong. Maybe my jiu-jitsu's great, and I just don't have enough time to show you everything because you're being annoying.
Right.
So, but my father-in-law, when people say, like, want to take something seriously, and this happens, this can actually correlate into jiu-jitsu as an Olympic sport.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay? I've noticed there's a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes, like, I take jiu-jitsu really seriously. I study all the time, and I roll all the time. And I'm like, okay. But you don't really know how to drill. And they go like, yeah, I fight all the time. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to let this go. My father-in-law has created more national champions that I could possibly understand and even count. He'd have to stop and write a diary to figure out how many national champions he's created in judo and state champions, New England champions in wrestling.
Yeah.
It's actually outlandish.
Sure.
Well, no one in jiu-jitsu knows who he is.
Yeah.
Why?
He's not a jiu-jitsu.
It's because he's not
jiu-jitsu
practitioner.
Right? Yeah.
It's like, which one do you think was harder to create? Wrestling champions or judo champions? Or jiu-jitsu champions?
I have no idea.
I would assume wrestling's pretty hard. There's definitely more wrestlers in the U.S. than jiu-jitsu.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? Judo may not be as hard in the United States as national level players, but it might be really hard to get judo up to that level to win nationals.
Sure. Yeah.
It's brutal. It's so difficult. Judo is so exact. You have to have a great coach for judo.
Yeah.
Try learning judo on your own. Go for it. Go do that.
Go practice the throws.
Go
with no one
get that
else.
done. Try to learn wrestling on your own.
Yeah.
Like elite wrestling. Go ahead.
Yeah, right.
Go figure that out. Like teaching judo. Sometimes I go, why am I even doing this? Right? I'm like, it's so hard to teach judo.
Yeah.
Great judo. It's just brutally hard, right? Then it's wrestling, and then it's jiu-jitsu. People might get mad at that, but this is the way it is.
Sure.
The reason why jiu-jitsu is easier to teach than judo, wrestling, and here is jiu-jitsu is not dependent on explosive, accurate takedowns as a way to win all the sports situations.
Sure.
Right? Oh, Tanner's here on the podcast. Tanner, shout out to Tanner, owner of CrossFit Providence. You're looking to get a good lift on. Tanner's in the house, okay?
Lift heavy things and people.
Jiu-jitsu as a sport, right? As a sport, not as martial art, which looks eerily similar to like the early versions of judo or what was jiu-jitsu, right? And all that stuff, and the wrestling, et cetera, et cetera. The person can sit down.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Groundwork, as we know it today, is inherently slower than wrestling and judo.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Like, there's nothing you can argue with that.
Yeah.
You could try. I guess you could try.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's a good way to argue this, right? Because of that nature, and potentially because of the nature of the culturalisms that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grew out of, it's very laid back compared to the other sports.
Sure.
Comparatively.
Sure.
Now, people are like, I train really hard, and it's no-gi, we train really hard. I'm like, well, comparatively.
Comparatively.
Okay? We're being compared. If you want to compare your elite gym to an elite gym for wrestling or in the U.S. or Russia or another country, I'm afraid you're going to be humbled.
Yeah.
Okay? If you went to an elite gym in Jiu-Jitsu, an elite gym or dojo for judo, and you're in Japan or France, I think you're gonna take a strong sip of like humble water. Okay? It's so hard because the drilling has manifested to a level that like you want to be champion, you know how to make champions. You can have hard rounds, at least in the U.S., but most of it's just merciless drilling.
Yeah.
Like you kind of want to die drilling. Okay?
Like it's a match.
It's not good. It's not enjoyable. If someone said like, Brett, are you gonna start training judo? I go, I think at the moment I'm gonna just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And everyone laughs, and I'm like, you just don't know.
You don't understand.
You don't understand, like, the pain and agony it takes to get into proper competitive judo shape.
Yeah.
It's brutal. It's called like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of uchikomis, which are fit-ins, all the time, and throwing. Like, people say, oh man, we had a hard time with Jiu-Jitsu because you went live all the time, and going live is really, really important. I'm not saying that.
Sure.
But it's not as high importance in some countries like Russia. They'll drill way more than they go live. Way less injuries, still winning at the international level.
Yeah.
And this is not just in wrestling and judo, it's in almost all their sports, right?
Sure.
They're manifestation of their cultural ideas of how to get really good.
So I'm gonna put a pin in that.
All right.
Because we do have to wrap up.
Oh gosh, we did it again.
And we're gonna have to hit a third one. We're gonna hit a third one soon.
No one wants to listen to stuff. It's just me rambling.
I do.
Rambling. Okay.
So next time, I want to continue the conversation.
All right.
Hit on how it gets in or out of Olympic sports, judo and jiu-jitsu. I don't want to get into a little gi no gi and then your strength training.
God, we did it again.
That's all right. We hit some awesome information there.
I hope so.
We hit some great information.
I hope so.
And I think we dove into a lot of just like the cultural aspects of why it's so important to be in a community surrounded with like-minded like judo or jiu-jitsu or wrestling with a coach that's experienced and know what they're doing.
So we'll wrap up with this. Gosh, you have to keep having me on the show. Everyone's gonna like not listen to the podcast. Like he keeps having Brett on there. Like I'm trying. I want to talk about macros.
You're
Brett
awesome.
never talks about the macros, right?
My fitness pal.
So, the idea, my idea of building dojos here in Rhode Island, as much as I have an ego and I'd like to create players that beat the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. I might have a few coming on the way, by the
Hey.
way. They usually start as youth athletes, but
Yeah.
that's because I have more development time, right?
Sure.
I can still make wherever. If you have goals, I'll
Yeah.
help you hit them.
Totally.
And I'm so obsessive with like helping people
Yeah.
and martial arts.
Yeah.
Put those two together to disaster.
Game over.
Listen to how many just randomly instead of talking to
There's
Matt right
passion
there.
there. There's passion.
The dojo is so much more than you practicing like arm bars and strangles.
Yeah.
In the end, the bigger the gym gets, the bigger the community gets, the harder it is to have cohesive culture. And the culture might matter more than everything else.
Totally.
Because it's the team and the culture and the dynamic of a dojo and gym that when life gets real hard and real messy, you might have something to turn towards.
Totally.
What if your family life just ends up in
Uploads.
ruin?
Yeah.
Uploads, just one day something happens, some terrible accident happens.
Yeah.
What if financially you've lost everything? Like, life can get kind of crazy. A pandemic could just arrive and shut down your business and your way of life and thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Things happen in life. It would be nice to have a team of people from all different backgrounds and all different capabilities and incomes and business ideas
They got your back.
who have your back in a
Yeah.
crisis. So
Totally.
you kind of want to have a growing, not just team, but community that has your back. Because at some point, life does get hard.
Yeah.
And it might be really, really important to have that with you. Even when life's going really well, it's nice to have a mechanic who just so happens to train with you.
Yeah.
You get in some legal trouble, it's nice to have the lawyer on the mat
Who happens to
to train with you.
Absolutely.
And so I would give everyone a perspective that Jiu-Jitsu, Judo have the capabilities of enriching your life far beyond what you believe is possible on the mat. I've never been unsurprised when someone who starts this, maybe it's a military person, maybe it's a person that runs their business, maybe it's a young kid that's a little lost. Maybe they're 18, 19, they didn't go to college, and maybe they're in college, and they're just like, I don't even know why I'm here, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. It's amazing. When you start doing this, you start honing on yourself in this practice, it's amazing what you can manifest for your life and for yourself and others. So I'll leave it at that.
I love it.
The last thing I'll say, billboard, Matt.
Billboard.
What goes up on that billboard?
What's on the billboard?
A great athlete at the time, and then he became a pop singer. But I used to love this guy named Sudo Genki Sudo, however you want to say it in Japanese, vice versa with the names over here, right? He was one of the first mixed martial arts players that I was like, wow, he's wacky. Almost like he's dancing the whole time in the ring, and almost like he didn't have a care in the world when he was actually fighting. He was good too. One day, he took out a flag after he won a fight, and it's got all these countries all over his flag, and in the middle it says, "We are all one." Nice. And that blew my mind, because that was the first time I saw a martial artist, a fighter at the time, who realized that he had a platform that he could increase awareness of being kind to one another as a human race. Other people, like, they're just trying to promote their fight, get the next paycheck. This guy comes out with a flag, we all won, and that had a major impact on me and my brother. It had a major impact.
That's huge.
So,
love that.
Going up on the billboard.
Love it. I love that billboard. Cool.
Now, we got stuff to do. We got to go.
We got to run. Round 2 was awesome. I can't wait for round 3.
Start the music.
All right, Rhody Strength signing off.